Welcome to another episode of Listening with Lindy Li on Radnor Studio 21. We have an incredibly special guest with us today, Dr. Wendy Hill from the Agnes Irwin School. Let me first say that as a Agnes Irwin alum, I'm incredibly grateful for all the amazing work that you're doing for our community. We're so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Prior to coming to Agnes Irwin, she spent 25 years at Lafayette College, where she served as both Dean of the Faculty and Provost. In addition to that, she specialized in animal behavior and neuroscience, which is incredible. You're a Jill of all trades. In 2014, Dr. Hill became head of the Agnes Irwin School. So thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here, Lindy.
We're incredibly grateful for your time. So as I mentioned before, you're kind of a Renaissance woman. You've done so much. And could you tell us more about your interdisciplinary approach and why it's important to have the science and the arts converge?
Sure. So I've always been interested in many things, even as a kid. So yes, I was interested in science and math, but also history and the arts, and that certainly has been fostered from graduate school on to being a college professor and an administrator. And I think that having that broad thinking is really important, and it's something I live each and every day. So, for example, yes, I am the head of school at the Agnes Irwin School, but we have a rich history at our school, and so I get to tap into my love of history. We're getting ready to celebrate our 150th anniversary as a school.
Oh, wow.
And so each and every day I get to talk about the great history of our school and our founder, who is the great-great-granddaughter of Benjamin Franklin and was quite a pioneer in her day. And so that's something that influences my day-to-day world. But I think if I pull the lens back, interdisciplinary thinking is critical. The world is interdisciplinary. And so if you think about any of the important issues that we face, they're going to be solved by people working together across fields. Just the other day I was talking to someone about the grand challenges identified by the National Academies of Engineering, things that engineers are going to need to think about over the next century. Things like, how do you supply clean water to people? How do you make solar energy affordable? How do you improve the urban infrastructure? And all of those issues are going to be needed to be tackled by engineers, but they're not going to be solved by engineers alone. We're going to need social scientists, policymakers, humanists to all work together. So that's how I think about interdisciplinary thinking globally.
Couldn't agree more. And you mentioned the rich history of Agnes Irwin. If I remember correctly, George Washington actually did sleep there, right?
Of course, in the lower school, which
people claim that, but it actually happened to us.
That's right. And interesting for me, coming from Lafayette College, the Marquis de Lafayette also visited the area as well.
That's incredible, right? So we mentioned your long history of accomplishments in science and animal behavior. How has that informed your tenure at Agnes Irwin?
Oh, I think it's been critical. I think to understand that, I probably have to delve into some misperceptions about scientists. I think when most people think about scientists, they think of somebody working alone, maybe sitting on a lab bench looking at microscope slides, and certainly that may be part of someone's job as a scientist, but there's so much more than that. There's the hard skills that you need, whether it's the chemistry, physics, math, but there are all of the soft skills that really are critical in being a scientist and also in the role that I play. So things like collaboration. Most of my articles, all of my grants are collaborations because science is a team effort. Things like communication are part of being a scientist and also a head of school. So being able to write well, speak well, tell a compelling argument, all important about being a scientist, something that I honed that also plays a role now. And then really science is creative problem solving. And I can't think of a better trait to have as a head of school, and really thinking about problems creatively, communicating, and doing it in a collaborative fashion.
Absolutely, and I can't say enough how grateful I am to the faculty. Really, they just inspired my love for chemistry and all the other subjects. And thank you so much for being a woman in science, because there's always a fundamental lack. So you set a good example for all of our girls and young women. Thank you for paving the way. You've had an incredibly successful career at Lafayette. As we mentioned, you were there for 25 years. That's a quarter of a century. What was it like transitioning to an all-female private school on the Philadelphia main line?
It was a very easy transition. I think the first reason you're going to really appreciate is that the Agnes Irwin community is so warm and welcoming. And so that made it very, very easy, from the students, the faculty, the parents, the alumni. I remember very vividly, Lindy, meeting you for the first time. I think it was my first month. And so that certainly helped the transition be so easy. I think the other thing is that so many elements of my job as provost and dean of the faculty at Lafayette College are similar to things that I'm doing as head of schools. So things about the curriculum, you mentioned the great faculty at the Agnes Irwin School, things about budget, that certainly is part of my role. But then there are things that are joyously different. So, and that has a lot to do with the students. So having students age pre-kindergarten to 12th grade. And so as head of school, there are some days that I start my morning at the car line for drop-off in the lower school, and I get to start my day by that first grader coming out of the car and giving me a big hug as she bounds into our school, or teaching middle school science to an engaged and inquisitive group of students. Or when I take batting practice with our softball team, those are the elements that are just joyous and have really been wonderful for me. I think the last part that's really helped with my transition is the real rich educational community that we have here in the main line. We have, for example, so many great colleges and universities. Mm-hmm. And so I had colleagues that I knew from those institutions from my work at Lafayette College that I was able to meet and continue my relationship. And at the Agnes Irwin School, we have many, many partnerships with colleges and universities in the area, like University of Pennsylvania, Drexel University, Villanova, Temple, Bryn Mawr College. And so that also, combined with so many other things, made this transition very easy and a very, very happy one.
I'm so glad to hear that, because as I mentioned, we're over the moon to have you, and you're such a force of stability and reassurance and great leadership. And as I mentioned, you have amazing interpersonal skills. I too remember meeting you for the first time, and you've always been incredibly gracious with your time and always responsive and responding to emails, and that means a lot. These little things, carry tremendous weight. And you mentioned earlier about misconceptions about scientists. Mm-hmm. They had their head down or they just toil away in the laboratory, but you're not like that at all. What role do you think your interpersonal skills, which are stellar, have played in your career?
Well, I mentioned hard skills and soft skills before. I think those both are important. I think your hard skills only get you so far. It's things like communication, being a good listener, I think is really important and something I pride myself on. And I know when you talk to employers in the area too, those are the kinds of skills that they're looking for. They're looking for people who can think well, but also communicate well and engage and collaborate with others. So I think it's critical, very much so.
And I've been through a lot of heads of school during my time. I just want to say that you are the most communicative and relatable and just heartwarming. Sorry to all the others, but I feel like I have such a special bond with you, and I know I'm not the only one. I think a lot of people in the alumni community would echo my sentiments here.
Well, that's lovely to hear, but I would say it's easy with the Agnes Irwin community because it is such a wonderful group of students and parents and alums.
Absolutely. So I spent 9 years of my grade school time in public school and transferred to Agnes Irwin my sophomore year. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit of a discussion in my family. Obviously there was tuition and all the other considerations. I would love to hear from you why you think it's important to invest in all-female education.
It's an important question, and it's one that certainly I talk to parents and students about. I would say that now more than ever, an all-girls school is very relevant. We still live in a world where there are gender stereotypes that keep girls and women from achieving their best, their most. We live in a world where there are more CEOs named John than all of the female CEOs combined. And there is very strong evidence that girls who go to girls' schools are better academically. They are more confident than their peers that go to co-ed schools. It has an influence on STEM. You mentioned STEM before. Girls who go to all-girls schools are 3 times more likely to go into engineering. Wow. These are palpable effects. And at the Agnes Irwin School, everything we do is through the lens of what's best for girls. We're not just a school with girls, we're a school for girls. And that makes a difference. So if you have a daughter, I would think you would want the best and the most for your daughter. And that's what you get in an all-girls school like the Agnes Irwin School.
Absolutely, and I just remember rolling out of bed not really having to worry about my appearances and just focusing on my studies and athletics because it was an all-girls and I didn't have to worry about the boys, and that's an important element as well. And
yeah, and it plays a role in terms of leadership too. Unfortunately, there's been studies that show even teenage boys and girls still believe that boys are more likely to be leaders than girls. And so what we do at the Agnes Irwin School is really talk about leadership and help girls develop a leadership identity, not just the skills that make a leader, but really an identity as a leader, because we know that will live with her after she leaves our wonderful school and make a difference.
Oh, terrific. And every time I walk on a campus, it almost brings tears to my eyes because the place is so beautiful and every year it changes so much. Could you briefly tell us about the changes the school has undergone in recent years? Because it didn't look like that when I was there. And the lobby is just gorgeous. It's stunning.
Sure. So there's been some physical changes. The one that you're referring to is our new 80,000 foot addition that gives us a new entranceway, provided an innovation center for STEM and STEAM programs, new athletic facilities, and that really, and a student life center. It happened before I came, so I don't know the school without it. It is a joyous place that certainly was designed with the kinds of students we have at the school. It's bright and airy. We also have an addition of a 6-acre parcel that has a beautiful historic building on it that was designed by Horace Trumbauer, who's a very famous architect in the area, and was built in 1911. So that has also provided some wonderful gathering spaces for us. The other things that I would say that are happening at the school is more about people and program. And we've launched a new strategic plan a couple of years ago, and it has really infused energy and excitement throughout the school with regards to the kind of teaching and learning we do. We're fortunate to have just gotten an E.E. Ford grant, which is a major grant from the very prestigious E.E. Ford Foundation.
Congratulations.
And it is something that really helps us with our faculty development, which is next to our students, the heart and soul of our institution.
Absolutely. Could you tell us what your thoughts are on what's your vision for Agnes Irwin in the next 5 to 10 years, and your vision for yourself? Where do you see yourself?
Well, we have lots of work ahead. This is where we are always thinking anew, trying to keep in touch with the latest research about what's best for girls, to make sure that we are always, again, through that lens of what are we doing that's best for girls. So, for example, we have the only program in Pennsylvania about Invest in Girls. It's about financial literacy, because we know that that's really important to help our girls get a leg up. Wellness is another big thing. We want to make sure that our students have a rigorous academic program, but also that they live it with a balance and a feeling of wellness. So we just had Rachel Simmons at our school, who's an award-winning author and researcher, so that we're aware of what are the latest issues around wellness for girls to make sure that our wellness curriculum is meeting the needs of girls now. So those are things that we're constantly updating to make sure that we are the premier place, not just academically, but also co-curricularly and extracurricularly for girls.
So something that's extra special about your tenure is that your daughter is also there.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like for the two of you to be in the same institution at the same time?
It's really positive. So for me, let me just start there, to be a head of school who's also a current parent, it gives me a depth of insight that is so beneficial because I get to see the impact of the school on my own daughter. Mm-hmm. And so I can talk really authentically about the effects of the Agnes Irwin School on girls. And so that's just added to, I think, my perspective and really is so valuable to me as head of school. For my daughter, when I was at Lafayette College, she had the college almost like her big backyard. She knew all the buildings, she would go to the library with me and other things, but she wasn't a current student there. So I would say there was some discussion we had about how we made sure we each had our own spaces, and it's been very fun for her to see me as head. I think she's very proud of what I do, but I also make sure to give her her own space in the school so that she doesn't feel like I'm always looking over her shoulder. So I think it's really the best of both worlds for us.
Oh, that's so wonderful, and I had the pleasure of briefly meeting her, and I would love for you to tell our audience what you shared with me earlier about her summer plans. It was incredibly impressive.
Yeah, so my daughter spent 4 weeks at a language immersion camp. It is a camp called Concordia Language Village in Minnesota. She was an hour from Fargo, North Dakota, and it was a Mandarin Chinese camp that she went to, but I think they offer 17. And it is fully immersive. So when you go, they take from you any books you might have in English. They put your American money in a bank account, and when you withdraw it, you get Chinese yen that you use to pay at the little snack bar that they have that's all done in Chinese. They eat Chinese food. All of the work that they do is around knowing the culture of China. It is fabulous. I wish I could have gone for the 4 weeks. But again, they do languages, all many ones. And so it's really quite an experience.
You sound like such a terrific mom. You really do. You're so adventurous and
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. You've accomplished so much in your life. What is the most important advice that you received? How did you get to where you are today?
Well, and certainly there's been adages that people have said to me. What's one? Be yourself because everybody else is taken. So trying to think about who you are and be true to yourself. And certainly I think that's something that I've tried to live by. But less the specific words, I think, have impacted me. It's more the mentors that I've had. Mm-hmm. I've been really fortunate over my time to have terrific mentors who are authentic, who care about me both in terms of my career, but also me as a person. And I think that's what I tell people is not so much the little words people may tell you, but how they live and the role models they are. And so seek mentors, seek people who really care about you, who you stay in touch with. I mean, that's the other great thing. And I have so many lifelong mentors. Faculty I knew as an undergraduate or as a graduate student, other colleagues that I've had the fortune to know that have really made a difference in my life. So I think that's the thing that I really draw strength from, and I also give to others as advice. Make sure that you have somebody you can ask advice and who will sponsor you, who will say, you really need to try for this grant, or this is a position I'm going to support you in, because those kinds of things make a difference.
Absolutely. Wow, it was so wonderful to have you here and to learn more about your life and the woman behind the magic at Agnes Irwin. Thank you so much for coming in today, Dr. Hill.
Thank you.
We're
It's my
fortunate to
pleasure.
have you, and thank you for all that you do. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Listening with Lindy Li. Our guest today was Dr. Wendy Hill of the Agnes Irwin School, and we were so fortunate to have her and learn more about the outstanding work that she's doing for our girls and young women on the Philadelphia Main Line. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You are watching Radnor Studio 21, an arts, educational, and entertainment station proudly serving the Main Line and greater surrounding area.